apologies. One of the pages of my speech fell out, so halfway I have to rely on my phone, so apologies for that. So, I would like to thank the JCCV for hosting this wonderful event and also for inviting me as a guest speaker. It is not just an honour for myself, but also as a representative of the Sephardi community. My name is Joanne Levy. I am the President of the Sephardi Association of Victoria and also of Sassoon Yehuda Sephardi Synagogue. Historically, the term Sephardi has been used for those Jewish communities of Spain and Portugal. However, today, it just represents those whose cultural heritage stems from the Middle East, from North Africa, India and Asia. Our synagogue represents these Jews. Many of our members are first, second and third generation from Jews expelled from Arab lands, including from Egypt, Iran, Yemen, Algeria, Iraq and so many other countries. And many of our senior members were refugees forced to leave or flee their homes. And like my family, they had to leave everything behind, start a new life in a new country. I'm going to be including some excerpts from my dad's memoir. In mid-February 1957, the day finally came for us to leave our apartment for the trip to Alexandria to catch our ship. We left the key in the door, looked back one last time, knowing that we would never see our home again. And not knowing what we were heading into. We felt like, and were refugees, being harried out from the only country we'd ever known. The Jews of the Middle East were predominantly well educated. They spoke multiple languages. For example, my dad in Egypt, and educated at both English and American schools and university, could fluently speak English, Arabic, Hebrew, Spanish, French and Italian. The majority of the Jews expelled from Arab lands went to Israel. Many went to the UK, France and America, but some came to Australia, settling here in Melbourne. Some went to Sydney and some to Adelaide, and they began assimilating into Australian society. However, those Sephardi Jews, including my family, they struggled to fit into the Jewish community, which was predominantly Ashkenazi. They craved a space to pray and socialise that was familiar to them. In Sydney, my father, together with my uncle and others, led in establishing a Sephardi synagogue in Sydney. Whilst here in Melbourne, it is thanks to my father-in-law, Maurice Levy, and Max Menahan, who were instrumental in the Sephardi Association of Victoria coming into fruition. Another quote. This is from my dad. My family and I were part of a group of Sephardi Jews who got together and decided to establish the first Sephardi synagogue in Sydney. The problem was, none of us, recently arrived migrants, had any money to contribute. So all the families involved worked long and hard to raise the funds to purchase a block of land. We held many fundraising activities such as fetes, lotto nights and an annual ball for which the women, including my mother, prepared magnificent Italian and Middle Eastern dishes. All the events were well attended and lots of fun. And after a couple of years, in 1961, we had raised sufficient money to buy a block of land in Fletcher Street, Wallara, where we built the first Sephardi synagogue in Australia, and where it still is, and is magnificent. Our tunes are different to the Ashkenazi. We pride ourselves on parents and elders teaching children our tunes so they can be passed down from generation to generation. We don't speak Yiddish. Rather, you'll get a conversation starting in French, finishing in English, lots of Hebrew, and also a smattering of Arabic cursing. We don't serve herring. We don't eat gefilte fish, cholent or kugel. No. Rather, we enjoy the foods like hummus, tahina, pita, spiced chicken, kamin, yellow rice, koftas and curries, and everything is cooked with so many spices: turmeric, cumin, za'atar, coriander, chili, and cinnamon. For dessert, we serve shortbreads filled with dates. We graze on dried fruit and nuts, and we love Middle Eastern sweets like semolina cake, couscousa, and baklava, all scented with rose water or orange blossom water. Yes, we cook and serve almost everything with nuts, and I believe we are the only synagogue not to have a no-nut policy. Maintaining our traditions is very important to us. We have a program called SONG, Sephardim of the Next Generation. SONG is about ensuring our services, our program, our events, as well as our charitable work promote and value our heritage. SONG is not just for Sephardim, it's also for the Jewish and wider communities who are interested in our rich traditions and cultural backgrounds. We've hosted cooking demonstrations, talks and shown films and have plans to do even more. And if you're interested in attending any of our events, please come and chat with me after because we'd love to see you there.
Yes.
Our most exciting and recent initiative is the creation of the Sephardi Heritage Museum in Australia with a beautiful acronym, SHAMA. Our museum is the only one in Australia. It's focused on preserving and promoting Sephardi heritage and ensuring our community's vibrancy for future generations. We're currently creating education programs for both teens and adults. Our aim is to ensure that many can learn about our heritage, the expulsion of almost 1 million Jews from Arab lands, and the annihilation of Sephardi communities in the Balkans, Greece and other countries during the Shoah. As we know, the Shoah impacted all Jews, not just those in Eastern Europe. The Nazis wanted to destroy all of us. They didn't care who was Ashkenazi or Sephardi. They wanted to wipe out the entire Jewish population. And after murdering most of the European Jewry, including in France, the Nazi armies headed south towards the Middle East. On their way, they obliterated entire Sephardi communities in the Balkans, as well as in Greece and in Italy. And tragically, most of those communities have disappeared. Everything is gone. That's why it's really important for us to remember them in our small museum, ensure they are not forgotten because they are part of the 6 million murdered simply for being Jewish. As I mentioned, the Nazis wanted to destroy the entire Jewish population, which is why they headed towards the Middle East. General Rommel had a list of all the Jewish males in Egypt, including my dad's, my uncle, my father-in-law, so many others. The Middle Eastern Jews were to suffer the same fate as the European Jews and be murdered in the extermination camps. In 1941, 14,000 soldiers, mostly Australian, together with soldiers from Britain, India and Poland, fought bravely against a much larger enemy, the German army, and against all odds, they managed to hold the Germans for 231 days until they were finally relieved by the British Army. This was a turning point in the war. We must honour, remember and never forget those brave men, the Rats of Tobruk, for saving the Middle Eastern Jews, including the Jewish community of 100,000 in Egypt, because that was my family. From my dad's memoir. My main memories of the war are plentiful tanks, military vehicles and British soldiers in the street. During the war, we struggled to obtain enough food as rationing had been introduced. One Friday night, my father, as was his custom, walked to the main Cairo Synagogue, Yehuda, which is about 1.5 miles from our home. And when he got there, he saw a group of men in British uniform, who were obviously Jewish, because they were at the synagogue. So he invited them, 10 soldiers in all, to our home for Shabbat dinner. When my mother saw my father come home with 10 soldiers, she screamed in Italian, "Jacques, we don't have enough food for ourselves and you invite another 10 people." My mother created an extra pot of soup for them, and I fondly remember the young soldiers sitting around our table who were mostly only 19 or 20 years old, hailing from all over the world. My father made a habit of bringing soldiers to our home. And as he used to say all the time, it didn't matter that we didn't have enough food, they just wanted somewhere to go and to be somewhere on Shabbat. Another snippet from my dad's memoir about leaving Egypt. After the Suez Crisis in 1956, my family became even more desperate to leave Egypt. The war itself was fairly short, but in that time, the situation for Jews was getting worse. We were so desperate to leave, we even considered getting on a ship bound for Greece or Italy in the hope of getting picked up by the Israelis who would give us a passage to Israel. We simply couldn't buy a ticket to leave the country. We first had to obtain an exit visa from the Egyptian government. But in order to get the exit visa, we had to show that another country had granted us immigration papers. So there's a whole story about my dad's family leaving Egypt and the difficulty in obtaining the papers. And we don't really have time tonight. Well, we could, but maybe everyone needs to leave. But I'll share that another time. So they finally got their papers, and please keep in mind my dad's family were not wealthy. We couldn't afford to send any of our furniture. We were only allowed to take 10 Egyptian pounds, which is not a lot, out of the country. The only personal items we could take were clothes and shoes. but I managed to take some of my university physics books, first aid books, which were later useful in my pharmacy degree in Australia, and a handful of pharmacy weights. Leaving behind absolutely everything we owned, we fitted our essential possessions into 6 bags. That's his parents and my dad, because my uncle had already left by that stage. Once there were thriving Jewish communities all through the Middle East, and some had been there since the destruction of the Second Temple, and now they are all gone. The once vibrant Jewish quarters with synagogues, schools, businesses throughout the Arab world have now disappeared, as has the Jews who once lived there. Not only were the Jews expelled, but they lost their property, their lands, their possessions, and also their identities. For many years, the Sydney community groups have come together to host commemorative events, remembering the Jewish refugees from the Middle East. Unfortunately, not so in Melbourne. So of course, our synagogue has hosted events and speakers, but nothing organised by the wider community. Our stories have rarely been told, and many of us feel forgotten by the wider Jewish community, that our culture, history and difficulties are not important. You may disagree, but that's how we feel. For that reason, I'm truly thankful to JCCV for organising tonight's event, the first that I'm aware of, showcasing and honouring our past and our history. Our Sephardim are a minority in a minority. It's always been a challenge to have our voices, our stories and our culture represented in the wider Jewish community, but we hope that events like this, our new museum, will help in the education of both Jewish and wider communities. So on behalf of my community, I thank you all for attending tonight's event, remembering the forgotten refugees, the Jews expelled from Arab lands. Thank you.